What's up, nerds? It's Havoc, and we are back finally with another how-to video today for Breakthrough. I've been holding off on this battle group for a while because I really wanted to find a game that was long, highlighted all of like the essential stages of the game with this battle group, and some of the different nuances of like the choices that you make. However, I just couldn't pass up this game against Jesulin. I think it really highlights like how most of my games go with Breakthrough Battle Group, especially against a good player like Jesulin. And so I kind of wanted to just use this example. I'm sure I'll do more of these. Hopefully I'll get a longer one where I can highlight some of those stages I talked about. But this one is going to be a little bit shorter, just a bit of a disclaimer. And we're going to talk about the strategies that make this battle group choice early, especially commitment to it early, different than some of the other battle groups that you may be playing with, or if you're trying to keep your options open in the early game. So with that, I'm not going to yap too much more to set up. We're going to get right into the gameplay here. So we're doing a grenadier opening. Two piles, very typical for this. Well, for Wehrmacht opener in general, but especially for Villa Fiore. It's not a super large map like Semois or maybe Jebel Pass, where a Ketten might make more sense, and you definitely need the early combat power. So we're going 2-pile opener. Fastest route for capture. You have two essential options here. I like this one because it allows me to spread out on the map and capture these points down below early. Getting munitions income is super important early on if you're going to play Breakthrough, because you need to have the option of getting your Assault Grenadier MP40 upgrade. These got a buff in the most recent patch, so they perform a little bit better than they did. Not significantly, but they are definitely more competitive than they were. Last patch, I feel like these were kind of outshined just by, especially if you're playing against riflemen. You know, I found a lot of engagements where it was like kind of optimal circumstances for the Grenadiers with the MP40s, but they still just like weren't performing super well. So this gave them a nudge in the right direction, and now they're much more powerful, especially in the early game, which is really, you know, where you're going to get the most out of your Assault Grenadiers. So, so for Villa Fiore early on, we're going to do Pioneer start. I like to march my first Grenadier up the middle to grab this +10 munitions point. Then I like to move into the middle VP. Wiring around this fountain is always a good idea, because this is probably like the easiest and most common cover point to go and capture. He pulls a great, like, doesn't show his rifleman here. He actually shows it as he walks right around this wall and engages me in close range. I'm going to lose that for sure, so I just back away. Take some pot shots at him from long range and then back away as he's got the high ground. We don't want to continue that engagement. Going to keep creating distance as he continues to chase. Engage again from long range as he continues to close. We're continuously engaging at long range. Now, some players might be like, oh my god, why are you taking this engagement? He's in green cover, dude. Like, you're going to lose that. Riflemen do not have good long range accuracy. They are a mid-range unit. Their optimal range is basically here and below. So they want to close this distance. Even from yellow cover to green cover at this range, the Grenadiers are actually going to do better. To save myself the bleed in the early game, and because I saw him pursuing, I just decided to retreat this Grenadier as not to take extra damage or extra manpower bleed, because the heavy investment in Grenadiers in the early game is what's going to allow me to build some tempo and some, I guess, like, force on the field, and by minimizing the bleed, I'm going to be able to get more units out more quickly. That's really what I'm trying to aim for. Try to get as many units out as possible so that I've got like my peak early game build, and then I can start to apply more pressure to the map because I haven't taken any bleed, and hopefully I've bled my opponent a little bit. When you're playing against riflemen, this is what you want to do. You want to keep your Grenadiers at max range. If you're running into riflemen, they get into a favorable engagement like they did up here, where, you know, they kind of just like crept right up into close range and started mitigating cover immediately. Just retreat away from those engagements, man. It's usually not worth you sticking around. There are some nuances, like maybe I want to grab control of this building. Maybe I have a Pioneer or two that can come in and support and help me win the engagement. But if it's 1-to-1 and the riflemen have basically got the best possible circumstances, just pull away from the engagement. If it's close range, you want to retreat. If it's long range, you might be able to soft retreat before doing that. But I always say this to my coaching students, like, don't put yourself in an engagement that you know is not good for you. Just avoid it. You know, just you can soft retreat or hard retreat, but don't prolong engagements that you're not going to win. That is a fast way to set yourself up for a disadvantage. So one of the different things about the early game with a breakthrough, and I haven't locked it in yet, but I am committed to it mentally. I remember thinking like, okay, I'm going to play breakthrough this game, is I go for a 3 grenadier opener. And the reason why we do this is we have a couple choices later on. Number one is like, by the time my 3rd grenadier comes out, you'll notice my munitions is ticking up to around 50. So this 3rd grenadier that is about to come onto the field, I'm going to be able to pop the MP40 upgrade from assault grenadiers immediately as they come out. And I like this because the unit that I like doing it on the unit that's fresh, because they are going to have no health damage, right? This grenadier, he's taken some chip damage. This grenadier's taken some chip damage. I want my assault grenadier to have the most health possible, and then my lower health grenadiers are going to support it by merging into it. And that's actually why I do a 3 grenadier opener. What has been very common for me with other builds is I'm going two pioneer start into 1 grenadier into MG42, grenadier, and then another MG42. So I end up with 2 grens, 2 MG42s. With breakthrough, I'm doing 3 grens and 1 MG42 typically. So I get this early game offensive power from MP40s. So we're going to stay in this engagement against the rifleman at long range. You can see here, we're winning this engagement even though he's got the superior cover. He's having a much more difficult time hitting me. Meanwhile, on the north side of the map, this is a really important thing to do with your pioneers in the early game, is when you're coming to the center of the map, you've kind of done your initial capturing, make sure that you have a good hard point for your pioneers to move into and protect themselves, because these guys are really fragile, right? They're not going to stand up super well against American engineers or sappers especially, or if they run into a line unit. They need somewhere they can basically go and buy time. And the best place to do that in the early game is buildings. So you'll notice, like, as I'm down here, I've got access to these 2 buildings, to this building here. And as I'm up here, I expected to run into my opponent just playing a lot of Villa Fiore. I know a very standard capture order is for my opponent to go north, north, and then this point, and then come to the VP. So I kind of expected that he was going to come here with something, probably a scout. And that's why you can see I postured my pioneer up against this building here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually wait until he closes in a little bit, and then I'm going to jump in this building to protect myself. Meanwhile, we're going to continue this favorable engagement for me at long range. You'll notice here's the 3rd grenadier coming in with the assault package. Oh, stepped out of the yellow cover. It's a bit of a miss micro for me there. I can see he's moving toward my cutoff. I'm going to chase with my 3rd grenadier. Meanwhile, this pioneer, I'm going to bypass this +16 and run to try and harass his +10. And this is part of the advantage of having a wide early game stance with your pioneers, is if your opponent's willing to concentrate their forces somewhere, it creates an opening for you to harass their economy. You can see that's what I'm doing here. So the MP40s have been teched. The grenadiers are coming in. I want to keep them all relatively close together so that they can support each other from range, and so that I can merge into the MP40 gren that I've got here. See Pioneer trying to harass this capture point, this VP. He's got a flamer engineer here. I'm trying to get right on top of it with the MP40 gren. Now, you don't want to do this against every building, but I'm actually okay to walk around this building with the MP40 gren, because there's not a lot of windows that are facing me regardless of where I am around the building. You can see, I think there might be a window here, but there's 2 windows here, 2 windows here, and 2 here, right? Actually, there might even be 1 here. So what I do is I'm okay to walk around this building, and I want to focus on the flamer engineer, because the flamer engineer is the biggest threat by far in terms of how much damage one unit is going to deal to me. So I'm going to force, I'm going to concentrate my firepower on the engineer to get it off the field so that I can pivot and focus on this unit that's in the building protected here. You can see I pull, I think I should in a second now, pull this grenadier around this side. Again, I'm okay with this. I've got good concentrated firepower here. All my Grens are here supporting the MP40 Gren. And I just finished my MG42. Unfortunately, while all that was happening, I wasn't paying attention to this engagement. I was too focused on this, and I actually lost my Pioneer. So the right idea here to go for the decap, but as soon as the Rifleman showed up, I should have retreated the Pioneer for sure. You can see here, continue to keep the forces, tactical force concentration, as we like to joke about, or my Gren Blob. And this really is the most effective way to fight any kind of Rifleman unit early on. I want to talk about this engagement. So you can see here, I'm moving out of the line of sight of this building. It only has windows on each side. If you go, and anyone who's played this map will know, if you hug the sides of the building, your opponent can't return fire, but you can deal damage to them while they're in the building. I'm bringing my MG42 up as well to support a push onto my opponent's cutoff. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I'm actually, you can see I'm moving my MP40 Gren into the retreat path of this scout, which I know is going to have to run back to base through this this archway here. And all of my Grenadiers are also converging on the scout position. You can see here, try and go for the kill. But I actually misjudged which path he was going to take. I thought he was going to go through here. He ended up going up north. So now we'll talk about the second part of Breakthrough. So in a 1v1 especially, the Breakthrough ability is probably your best choice. There are situations where the smoke isn't a bad idea, but generally I prefer Breakthrough. It's just very powerful, it's very long, and it's very cheap. And in 1v1 where territory control is like, there's territory constantly changing hands, and territory control is arguably the most important. This is a very powerful ability. So I've effectively forced him off the field. I forced off a Rifleman, Flamer Engineer, and the Scout. That's going to create an opening for me to harass his economy. I'm coming in here with my MP40 Gren, but I can see he's got a massive group of units in here, so I'm just going to back away. Now, my plan was to go for the cutoff, but unfortunately, just due to taking a little bit too long to try to move across here, I ended up having to retreat this MP40 Gren. Ideally, it would have been better for me to move to try to capture this cutoff. Now, these two cutoff points, you can see they kind of they influence, or I guess they connect the most important resource points for each player. So up here, we've got the north side plus 16 and plus 10 fuel, and the south side connected the plus 10 and the plus 16 here. So these cutoffs, this is the most effective way to get a resource advantage over your opponent. And you can see here, like, I'm making the effort to go for the cutoff, but unfortunately because of the timing, as well as him retreating early on and then kind of anticipating my next move, comes right out to the cutoff. And this is really where you want to be going with any fresh units coming out of your base anyway, because getting cut off here can be pretty devastating to your pacing of your early game. So I can see him pushing in here. He's got a big force concentration. I'm going to bring my MG42 up. The way that I move my MGs typically is we start with an attack move, and then I'll actually shift command into something more intentional in terms of a position for them. So anytime I'm moving my machine gun, generally I'll give it an attack move order to the general area I want it to be. And then after I've done that, basically I will have it set up in a more deliberate defensive position. And this is a good way to make sure that your MGs are going to be as responsive as possible to any changes in what you can see. For example, if I set up if I do a setup order here where the MG is facing this Rifleman squad, and a Rifleman happens to emerge from the fog of war over here, I'm not going to be able to respond that quickly to try to rotate the machine gun and deal with this threat that's on my flank, right? With an attack move, as the unit is moving towards this side, as soon as that Rifleman comes into vision, the MG is going to set up facing them. So it's going to take care of that for me, right? That's why I was saying, start with the attack move, because if there's any changes to what you can see, then the computer will actually handle it faster and issue the command to deal with the flanking unit faster than you can react to it. So that's typically why I control my MGs that way. So I can see actually he's just going to commit to this archway push. I'm using the grenadier as bait so I can set up the machine gun. I catch out both the rifleman and the captain here and force a retreat on him, which is great. And I can see him swinging around with the engineer, so I'm going to pack up my MG and reposition. This is something you always want to do after you force your opponent to retreat from a position. You always want to reposition your machine gun, because now that your opponent knows that they're there, they're going to plan their next move based on the fact that your machine gun was there, right? So if you reposition, you actually have a good chance of getting more good value out of the machine gun. Whereas if I stay here, I know my opponent, they're going to flank around with the flamer engineer. Maybe they'll come in from this side. Maybe they've got a mortar and they'll barrage me. Either way, anytime you get spotted with a machine gun, you always want to relocate your position after getting a good suppression and forcing retreat on your opponent's units. Okay. So we'll talk about the next part here. So we're going into tier 2. You can do tier 2 or tier 3 with this build. Luftwaffe Company is probably more powerful for the mid game. If you're playing a late game or planning to play a late game, tier 3 might be better. But I think in general, Breakthrough synergizes better with tier 2 play, which is the Luftwaffe Company. And we'll talk about why shortly. So as this is going up, oh, here comes the engineer squad. Pioneer caught out by his M3 that he rushed out. He's using armored. You can see he's got fast deploy, so his
rapid production protocols are in effect.
His half track here came out super early. You'll notice now, typically, I was going for officer quarters before, but since they introduced the new medical station upgrade that requires no fuel, I'm actually favoring this over going for the officer quarters upgrade. And then what I've been doing instead is I used to field 3 grenadiers with the officer quarters. Now I'm skipping the officer quarters, and oftentimes I'm actually going to end up transfer ordering one of my grenadiers into either a Jaeger squad or a Panzer Grenadier, depending on whether I've gone for tier 2 or tier 3. And we'll talk about that when I do that. You'll also notice I've only gone for the 1 MP40 upgrade. I feel like on most maps this makes sense, because really the purpose of the MP40s is to give you that early game offensive power and tempo. But you guys know, and I've talked about this before if you've heard me, like Grenadiers do not scale as combat units, and so I don't want to over invest my resources into them, especially if I'm planning to play tier 2, where having access to munitions for a Panzerschreck upgrade is going to be super important for me. So what I've also done here, you'll notice as soon as my tier 2 went up, I very quickly selected rapid production and am getting my 221 out. This is the scout car unit. I'm a big fan of this unit. I think it's good on pretty much every map for the most part. There are a couple of exceptions. But like if the map is too congested, it might not be very good. Faymanville kind of comes to mind when I think about this. But in general, more open maps, 221 is just an exceptional unit. And rapid production is going to allow you to shave off 30 seconds of build time, which is going to give you more time to press the advantage of getting this unit out early. And potentially slow down your opponent's first vehicle because maybe they have to tech grenades. But it's just going to allow you to run rampant on the map. And this is really going to be the unit that gives you a ton of tempo as you try to quickly transition into the mid game, where you really want to close the game out if possible. So 221 is out. I can see the half track continuing to chase my Pioneer, right? I have my MP40 Grens here. I've already used Sprint, so I don't have that active, unfortunately. My 221 getting into position to try to block or impede this M3 from continuing to bully me. You can see the M3 actually overcommits here and gets too close to the Pioneer. And I'm actually able to get a Faust off on the M3 because of the MP40 Grens. And this is another really nice thing about the MP40 Grens, is because they have access to sprint, you can catch out and punish some of these early game oppressive moves from your opponent playing with like an M3, for example, you only need a little bit of chip damage from the MP40s themselves before you're able to get the Faust on with the engine damage. So as soon as we get an auto slow down this engagement a little bit, I'm focusing on closing the gap with the MP40s because they have the highest DPS against the M3 here, because it's an automatic weapon. And you can see the scout car, I'm focusing on getting on the rear armor of the M3. Right? I'm actually trying to block him, but it's kind of hard to block in this game, as you can see. Continuing to move behind him with the 221. We take out the first M3, so that's a huge pickup for us. Now, we do run into the machine gun, but now my 221 is pretty free to get really aggressive on my opponent's units here. You can see I'm actually focusing on the scout rather than the machine gun because I can see I have a good chance of wiping the scout out based on the health that it has. And I'm actually going to go for the chase here. Try to finish the scout off. He does the this captain ability. What is it called again? I forget. Mark vehicle. It reduces my armor. It forces me to take additional damage. And it makes this vehicle easier to hit. This is an exceptional ability. I've talked about it at length in my other US videos. But this is a good choice by him. Trying to soften up my 221 so that he could damage it with small arms and potentially deter me from chasing his scout. But I decided to chase anyways because the scout was so incredibly low. I just couldn't pass up. I don't think Jesulin has gone for grenades yet, so he's kind of just chased. And the nice thing is it also gives vision, so you can see, you can kind of see my 221. I'm just kind of poking away at long range, waiting for him to try to close the gap on me. Machine gun here catches my machine gun. He actually pulls another M3 from base.
Enemy forces have claimed our
I get the flank on him here with the 42 and the Pioneer combo. Go. We forced him off. We're gonna pull our 221 back to base and get some repairs on. And now, because I know he's gone for armored, I know I'm gonna need to start investing in Jägerschreck soon because he's probably gonna get more vehicles out as soon as possible. So, what do? Breakthrough is available to us again, which is great. Again, only 40 munitions. Actually, probably an optimal opportunity for me to use it here. But we didn't opt for it yet. There we go. So, we transfer ordered one of our grenadiers into a Jaeger. This is a little bit less manpower expense. And also, you don't want to carry on the game with more than 2 grenadiers, in my opinion. In their current state, they're just not good scaling combat units. So in games that I'm building 3 of them, I like to do transfer orders on the first squad that I get out from either the Jaeger squad or the Panzer Grenadier, whichever option I have selected. And in this case, I'm going for the Jaeger with the Panzerschreck because I want to be prepared for the next vehicle that he has in store. And I'm anticipating, he's going to probably replace the half-track that he lost. And so I'm going to use the Jaeger with the Panzerschreck to help me deter that.
Installing a Luftwaffe officer's quarters.
Also going for officers' quarters. I think this is highly underrated, and I don't see enough players doing this early on. Getting your units to their mid and late game veterancy with officer quarters is just a great fuel investment. Probably the best fuel investment that you can make is getting your tier 2 or your tier 3 officer quarters. I haven't been going for tier 1 as much recently because the value of the heal has been diminished by the cost reduction on the medical station. So I'm usually going for the medical station when I need heals rather than going for officer quarters from this building. It's also too expensive now. It used to make sense for this, but now with the medical station change, it just doesn't. It's not really justified. So I'm generally passing on that as an option. Quad catches my grenadier out in the open. This thing is absolutely devastating to infantry. I don't care what people say, especially in 1v1s. This thing is an absolute beast. It does so much damage. Noticing my the whole bunch of riflemen and the flamer engineer closing in here. I'm just gonna jump into some green cover. I'm probably gonna retreat.
Headquarters has an officer stationed.
There's too many units here for me to fight this.
Victory point is under enemy control.
Taking a little bit too much damage. I should have retreated earlier for sure. No reason for me to stick that out. I actually retreated my Jaeger by accident. I think I had it selected. And then I'm going for the radio antenna upgrade. So, I want to talk about the difference between the radio antenna and the Panzerbuska. Personally, I don't really like the Panzerbuska right now, especially with the nerfs to the white phosphorus round ability, or the snare ability that it used to be a snare ability. It's not anymore. Now it just disables the weapons. I don't really think this upgrade is justified in its cost. You know, the best case scenario now is like you kill the vehicle that you're dealing with, and then it kind of becomes useless for anything besides like spotting, which is fine, but it's really expensive to be something that's just a spotter, right? Because the Panzerbuska can't hit anything. You can't use white phosphorus on any other targets besides vehicles. So even it's like once you kill your opponent's vehicle, best case scenario, you kind of have another dead unit. Not completely dead, but like just it's really not worth it. So I really like radio antenna because of the map and the intel that it provides you, the map insights and the intel. Super helpful for helping you position for your opponent's vehicle pushes, and really just give you all the information that you need to prevent being surprised anywhere. Because it pretty much in 1v1 it almost covers like the entire active section of the map when it pings. So I highly prefer this upgrade, and it's also significantly cheaper. So yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of the radio antenna upgrade for the 221. You'll notice I prioritized the Panzerschreck first because I wanted to make sure that I had that out so I could protect my 221 from a dive. And then besides that, now we're going to be going for... I'll be going for medical station pretty soon. You can see here I'm using the medical kit to try to heal as many of my squads as possible at once. Actually managed to catch the quad with a Shrek shot. Try to get some extra damage in with the 221, but you'll notice I didn't quite get any damage, and he started to get quite a few penetrating hits on the 221, so I had to back it away. And we're just going to ease our way back in here into the center. You know, the half-track's giving Jesulin quite a bit of tempo and field presence, but the 221 is going to be really nice because it's going to allow me to play around where I know he is. These pings. So I tried to take advantage of maybe he wasn't paying attention to the quad, and I tried to sprint in here and get a Panzerfaust off, but Jesulin, you know, no fool in these kind of situations, and he kind of catches me out. Forces the retreat, so well played by him. Forcing off this M1919 here, pursuing with the Jägerschreck. I want to keep that M16 off the field as long as possible. And now I'm going for another Jaeger. Because I know that he has one half-track, he's probably going to go for more. I'm eventually going to need more Jaegers anyways. I've decided to go for another Jaeger here. Another decent option would be the Flak 30 anti-aircraft gun team. This is going to allow you to fight some of these lighter vehicles like the various half-tracks. Greyhounds, it's quite good against. Anything heavier than that, like a Chaffee or Stewart, it does some damage to, but not nearly as consistently. So I'm going for the Jaeger because I'm getting decent tempo and I'm on my way to tier 2.5 or the support elements upgrade. A lot of people ask me, when do I go for this? And it's pretty simple. I think you essentially need to get like 5 core units on the field, so non-engineer units. In my case, I'm going for I was going to go for another Jaeger. I think I end up getting one anyways, but I decided to go for support elements first because I might actually get enough fuel for the Wirbelwind. I do see a lot of players get this either too early or too late. I think the sweet spot is like once you've banked between 80 and 90 fuel, as long as you can count on having consistent income after that, that is around the right time to be getting the support elements upgrade, because then as soon as you tick 50, and this is part of the importance of timing in this game, and especially when you're playing Breakthrough and trying to get some use out of rapid production, that getting good timing on your Wirbelwind is a really important part of making good use of Breakthrough. Not as important when you're playing tier 3 and you're playing potentially with Stugs. I tend to use Breakthrough Battlegroup more often with tier 2, and with the Wirbelwind timing, you can get some really, really great results if you pull it out early enough. And that's kind of what I'm aiming to do here. I'm trying to get best possible timing on the Wirbelwind before he can get too much tempo with these half tracks that he's got out. So I'm going for support elements here. I think I will end up going for the Jaegers, and then I'll be saving for my first Wirbelwind. Trying to bully the captain out of here with the 2-2-1 and the Jaeger combo. Playing in the middle with the Grenadiers, trying to stick to the green cover. Deterring the quad with my Jägerschreck. We're taking a lot of damage, but this isn't too bad because we're also farming veterancy with our Jaeger squad. There we go. Just going to retreat there because we don't want to take any more bleed damage necessarily. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we go for another Jaeger here, I think. And then you'll notice, if you do some quick math here, after exactly 1 minute, I'm going to have enough fuel and enough manpower, provided I don't bleed anymore, to get my Wirbelwind out. And that's the kind of quick math you have to be able to do in the game, is you're kind of trying to figure out like where you can fit units in. Oh, quad dealing some big damage to us again. Grenadier just trying to deter the quad further, buy some time. Don't want to take too much damage though, so we're going to back away. Getting some repairs on my 2-2-1, getting some intel. Another Jaeger on the field. Going to have enough munitions for a Shrek pretty soon. I actually go for field medics here instead of... So this is actually a mistake on my part. I do want this, just not right now. So maybe I cancel it. We'll see. Because I have the medical kit upgrade available. I think I was just focused on what was going on here. Yeah, okay, I did go through with it. So yeah, that was a mistake on my part there. I could have got an earlier timing on the... And actually it would have been perfect because I've got these 2 Jägerschrecks coming out right now. But yeah, it would have been better for me to save and just go for use the medical kit on my Grenadier before getting this. Because right now I'd be able to build my Wirbelwind. But that's okay. We're going to play a little bit defensive because we have enough fuel in the bank for our Wirbelwind at this point. And this is pretty good timing. Around 13 minutes is pretty normal for getting your first Wirbelwind out, especially with Breakthrough. See, right now we're trying to play also on the south side of the map. Trying to use my 2-2-1 where his half tracks aren't, and I haven't seen them. Interesting, interesting satchel charge there from Jesulin. I'm just trying to hold on to the VP so I don't start bleeding VPs like crazy. Grenadier sticking around these 2 Jaegers. If I can catch out one of his half tracks, then I'll be in really good shape. Now I should have backed this up more because I actually saw his half track here. Keeping the Grenadier kind of in cover as much as possible. Unfortunately, we get spotted out too late because I was distracted by the machine gun. Half track gets another shot, quad finishes it off. Grenadier's forced to retreat. I was focused on getting the flank on this 1919 here. Bars come out. First Wirbel's coming out, and I'm gonna force the Wirbel in with the push that I'm doing here in the center because I want to have all these units properly supporting each other. And this is really what it comes down to when you get to the mid game. Once your first Wirbelwind comes out, especially if your opponent's playing vehicle heavy, you need to keep your Jägerschrecks together and in support of your Wirbel, because if your Wirbel gets caught out, you're going to lose all your tempo and then you're going to be way behind. because it's a very expensive unit. So you can see we're leading in here with the Shreks. We're popping breakthrough. I'm going to push in here with the Wirbel because he doesn't know it's on the field yet. This is called shock value. I've talked about it a lot in other videos, but basically, like, shock value is when you reveal your strong unit to your opponent for the first time, you want to deal as much damage as possible when they are least prepared. And so what that's going to look like here is I'm trying to bait him into fighting me with his quad, especially with the Jägershreks that are walking in. So I'm trying to bait him in so that ideally I can get a shot off from one of the Shreks and then finish it with the Wirbel that is going to chase in and try to catch both. So you can see here, Wirbel's going to push in right behind the Jaegers. And then I can see his quad is super far back, right? I also know that he just pushed off a Pioneer with a machine gun team that is posted up right here. So knowing that it's not going to be safe for me to try to dive his base with the Wirbelwind, which because Jesulin is such a good player, I know that he knows that I have it on the field because you can hear it. It has a very distinct sound. You can hear it even through the fog of war. So I know that he knows that. He's going to be prepared for a base dive. It would be way too bold of me to try to dive him right outside of his base with where the quad currently is. I am going to continue the pressure onto his cutoff point, but instead you'll notice I'm actually changing the direction of my Wirbelwind, and I'm moving to try to cut off this machine gun that he used to force off the Pioneer over here, as I am also moving the Grenadier in support. We are moving into the retreat path of this machine gun, ideally looking for the interception, and best case scenario, I can decrew it and steal it. And that's a huge win for me, right? So that's what we're going for here. It was a little bit of a change in the plan based on where I could see his quad was positioned. So we get caught out. With the Wirbel, what you want to do is you want to close the gap on whatever your target is, get right in their face, and then just park on the retreat path. You're going to get maximum accuracy. And as your opponent is retreating through wherever path they have to go, as they retreat by you, you want to rotate your vehicle so that you're postured to be able to chase this as if necessary. Grenadier's moving in, but you can see the Wirbelwind just absolutely chewing through this thing. Don't even need to consider moving it. Grenadier here for the pickup. We're going to do a quick steal. We're going to, I think, merge. Yep, we're going to merge into that. And then we're going to back the Grenadier up and use our remaining breakthrough time to capture this +5 fuel. So now we're in a really commanding position. We've got 2 machine guns. We've got 2 Jaegers, 2 Grenadiers. Our first Wirbelwind is on the field. We're now in a really commanding position. And you can see second machine gun here. What did we do? We had it set up by the truck, forced away a opponent's unit, and then we backed up to a new position, maximizing the value. We are pushing in the middle. This is a very nice area to play with the Wirbelwind against half-tracks or any casemate vehicle specifically, because you can use the building as well as these walls to hide behind so that they can't shoot at you. And what happens oftentimes is players will overcommit their half-tracks into the center section of the map and get caught up on the pathing because of all this debris that they can't crush. Causes them to get stuck and put themselves in a bad position. So playing around here in the middle with the Wirbelwind is actually a great way for me to bait him into overcommitting his half-tracks and potentially catching them out. We can see the GMC here is hitting the machine gun team, going to force the retreat along with the quad.
We have 300 points remaining.
Wirbelwind is marked by the captain, so I don't want to commit it to the middle because it'd be very dangerous for me to do so. Also, my Jägershreks are in base, so I don't have the proper protection for my Wirbel, so I don't want to play up too far in the middle during this time. Good push in from the quad to force my Pioneer off the good cover. I reposition my Grenadiers, try to get some cheeky grenades off on this machine gun team. MG tries to capture the suppression there in support, but he's good retreat from Jesulin on retreat. Quad just chewing away at my Grenadiers. Now we can see Wirbel, right? Now I'm properly supported by the Jaegers that are coming in. I'm aiming for this GMC. I'm very comfortable forcing this engagement here where the GMC is going to want to push in and take more shots at the Wirbel. He hasn't seen my Shreks yet, right? He can't see them. They're still in the fog for him, right? This is something, you know, you're largely only going to know from experience, but I am very deliberate about baiting damage on the Wirbelwind. I know how many shots it takes for him to kill. It takes 5 shots, right? So I want him to commit this so that I can catch him out with this double Shrek that's about to walk up here, right? And ideally, you know, potentially like bring the rifleman in to try to go for the snare or what have you. But if I can catch this GMC out, it's going to give me a big advantage because now I can capitalize and use the tempo that I've got, right? So let's slow this down a little bit. So, see, we're slowly backing away. We're trying to see if the GMC will come in. The Jaegers are walking straight to the position where the GMC would potentially come from. We're going to push back in. We actually missed the first shot. Catching out the captain that's moving into the center building. Very comfortable to hug this because, again, he can't shoot me through it with the GMC. Jaeger's continuing to push in. I'm going to try to pick up the captain. And his half-tracks, look at that. They got stuck on each other. Now, in this situation, there is nothing protecting the GMC from the Wirbelwind diving in, right? What I need to do is take advantage of the fact that this is a casemate vehicle. It can only fire at me when it's facing me, right? So what that means is that I'm going to dive this. I'm going to continue to pursue with the Jaegers. Ideally, I'm going to try to get behind it with the Wirbelwind and block it so that the Jaegers can get the killing blow on these, right? Meanwhile, machine gun coming up to support all this push, doing a nice attack move in here. Unfortunately, I'm so focused on this engagement, we've got a whole bunch of crap in base. But the point is, this is an opportunity. He's got no snares in the vicinity that I can see. I know where this rifleman is. I know he's got a rifleman here. I know there was another one that I just forced to retreat from the center. I don't think he has a fourth one. I'm banking on that fact, right? So I'm going to push in here. I'm going to try to stay to the outside of the arc on the GMC. And if he stops to rotate, he's going to eat the shots from the Jaegers, right? So here's what we're going to go for, right? We're going to go around quick, just freaking... That one short pivot completely cost him that vehicle, right? And now, traffic jam. He actually quickly revealed this GMC as I was pushing in. And I'm like, all right, based on the position that I'm in, based on the fact that I know he has no other riflemen around, I actually have an opportunity to collapse on this because he can't go anywhere. Again, like we talked about, if he rotates, I'm going to be able to get on top of him anyway. The easiest thing for the GMC to do is back up in a straight line. If the GMC can't do that, there's an opportunity for you to collapse and take advantage of the fact that this thing doesn't have a turret, and the Flak Veerling does. Flak Veerling. The Wirbelwind, sorry. I keep calling it the Flak Veerling. The Wirbelwind. The Wirbelwind has a turret. The GMC does not, right? So all I have to do is get around this. So we're going to drive in. We're already committed to the engagement. Jaegers are continuing to follow up, right? And he's trying to get the shot off on the GMC. He's buttoning me with the quad. Jaegers are continuing to push in here, right? And we're just taking advantage of the fact that he's a casemate vehicle. I'm staying on the target as the GMC. I'm standing still for the increased burst duration. Unfortunately, he actually stopped there, which actually killed him. Jaegers come in for the killing blow on the quad. Second Wirbel actually, or second Jaeger actually missed. And then we're gonna back out away from these riflemen that just engaged us, right? Machine gun covering the retreat from the Jaegers. If I was unlucky, I definitely could have lost the Jaeger Shrek here, which would have been unfortunate, but an acceptable loss, frankly. Wirbel, we're gonna back our way around back to the base. VP's not in a great situation right now, but from a tempo perspective, we're in great shape. We're now going to get our second Wirbel, and there's absolutely nothing that he can build that's going to be able to stop us now. Because he's gone for more half tracks rather than motor pool with maybe like Chaffee or some other vehicles. Very comfortable getting up in his face with this Wirbel. MG covering the approach rather than the unit in the building. The unit in the building is properly covered by the Wirbel and the Grenadier combo here. And once we get some quick repairs on the Wirbelwind, we're going to look for an opportunity to try to close this game out. Because now we know we just killed 3 of his half tracks, right? So now we know that we have the vehicle advantage. We have the tempo advantage. This is what we're going to want to use to try to close the game out. And this is your opportunity in the mid game. This is the best, strongest time during the game for Wehrmacht with this specific battle group. After this, it only gets harder, okay? Because the longer the game goes, if Jesulin is able to get into tier 4, easy 8s, I'm going to have to deal with it with martyrs, right? And easy 8s are so beefy that even between like double Shreks and maybe like double martyrs, if he has like 2 or 3 easy 8s, he's still going to be able to potentially get the jump on me and take out all my units, and then I'm cooked, right? Now, we do have the Tiger as like a late game option to try to kind of claw your way back in the game with this tier 2 heavy play. But generally, I prefer to try to close the game out in the mid, and that's usually about the time that you get your second Wirbelwind. So you can see we're going to be looking for that opportunity now, especially knowing that he's gone for half tracks. I do not want him to make it to tier 4. If your opponent is playing motor pool and heavy on like Chaffies, it's not going to be as easy. You may have to invest more in more Jaegers with Panzerschrecks. You may have to wait for more martyrs. You may even have to like side tech into Stugs. I've done it before. But it's usually a little bit more dicey if your opponent's playing motor pool. But if they're playing heavy on half tracks, this going for the close in the mid game is completely possible once you get your second Wirbelwind out, and provided that you're properly supporting them with the appropriate amount of Panzerschreck Jaegers. So machine guns going to continue to help us control the middle. Repositioning the machine gun after the burst. Actually gets a good smoke in there. Really nice smoke. I'm gonna pull this back. Confident that this double Vet 2 MP40 Gren can beat the Bar Rifleman that we're dealing with here. I did back up this 1919 just a little bit. And now the best way to close out the game, to go for the game closing move, is using Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg is probably the best vehicle ability in the game right now. So you can see here, especially on something like the Wirbelwind, 40% rate of fire on an already high rate of fire weapon just dramatically increases its DPS. 20% speed is excellent for chasing and or closing the gap against these kinds of half tracks. And you also have the harder to hit effect, which increases the possibility that your opponent's going to miss as you're driving at them. So really, really great for all-in dives, this ability. Now that my Jägerschrecks are back from base, I'm going to go for the all-in commit here most likely as soon as this Wirbelwind pulls up and I can get it paired up with this second Wirbel here. I know that he can't have more than 2 of these at the most, right? So that's what we're going to go for at this stage. I think we end up finishing the repairs here. Gren's force him off on the bottom. Wirbelwind's pushing, you can see here, Wirbelwind pushing in here. Blitzkrieg would only make this harder for him. GMC staying too close, right? So we engage actually the white phosphorus rounds to deter the vision on it. And he knows at this point, now that I've killed his GMC, the best he can do is build one more. And I've just got too much momentum at this point. I'm just going to be able to drive into his base and polish off all of his infantry. And so he surrenders. So that's it. So guys, this is generally how a lot of my breakthrough games go. To kind of backtrack and talk about, if we were to play this game out in a couple different scenarios, we'll kind of explore them, right? Number one, when I'm playing against UKF, I do like often going mechanized assault group instead of 2-2-1 because the Stummel is a much better unit for dealing with UK forces infantry than the 2-2-1 usually, because the Stummel deals area of effect damage at a long range to units that are in cover. And that is the modus operandi. That is like what the UK forces infantry want to do. They want to engage you at long range and they want to be in cover. So this combo, this Stoss plus 251 combo, and then upgrade the 251 into a Stummel, is a great option for you in the early game. If you're dragging out the early game and not going for, like, you can still play tier 2. I actually think tier 3 is much more viable against UKF because you have Stugs, which are a great answer to mid-game armor, packs as well. The Wirbelwinds can be much harder to use against like a Stuart or like a team weapon heavy composition from UKF versus US. But I love this calling group is fantastic. And the Stormtroopers, obviously having them super early, they'll scale really well against British infantry as well. And there are also some maps where this also may make more sense over the 2-2-1. I mentioned Faymanville. The Stummel is fantastic on Faymanville because you can park it behind one of the shot blocking buildings, one of the small buildings in the middle or on the edges of the map. It can lob units over lob rounds over trees. It can fire smoke, which is really nice. And again, having the Stormtroopers super early on is just really, really powerful, and they will scale really, really well. Like I mentioned, MP40s, generally I'm going for maybe one in the early game and kind of just merging my way into it. I'll go for a 3 Grenadier opener into machine gun, and then swap one of my Grenadiers for either a a Jaeger or a Panzer Grenadier. Both are completely fine. Panzer Grenadiers probably more suitable for those congested maps like Faymanville, like I mentioned, or Angeville. Jaeger's good on more open maps like Villa or Tunis. But yeah, and then breakthrough, right? We talked about breakthrough. Really great. Anytime there's downtime, if you have 40 munitions to spend to capture territory, this is a great way to spend it. You'll usually recoup this back as quickly as you spent it because of all the territory that you'll be able to capture. So this is really, really nice ability. And then you can see here, Blitzkrieg, excellent vehicle ability. You can use this on tier 2 vehicles. You can use it if you're playing like tier 3 into tier 4 with maybe Panzer Grenadier Company. Maybe you're skipping on Stugs or using Stugs, I don't know, and then going for P4s. Breakthrough is really good either way. And you'll notice, because of how much combat has taken place, we're actually very close to the CPs that we need for Tiger. We're still a ways off in terms of resources. But generally, when you're playing tier 2.5, that's what you want to do. You want to play heavy into tier 2.5, get some flax, get maybe a martyr if you need it, and then just slowly make your way to Tiger. Once your Tiger's out, you go for your game-winning push using Blitzkrieg. As for the other abilities, like I said, I don't use smoke that often. I don't think the incendiary bombing run is generally worth it. It's pretty expensive, and you only get one line. It's very narrow. Doesn't do a lot of damage. The truck I don't generally go for at the moment. I feel like you may as well get a cash if you're thinking about the truck. And then the Panzer Command Tank, not bad. This can be really good if you're playing against like, I don't know, an opponent that's like going super heavy on Stuarts or maybe Chaffies. Because it gives armor and rate of fire. If you're playing like Stugs or something, it can be a really nice complement and kind of help you scrape through the mid game. But generally, going heavy onto tier 2.5 and making your way to the Tiger is the safest way to close the game out. So despite, being quite down on VPs, Jesulin going for a lot of tempo in the early game with all the half tracks he built, we did manage to claw our way back and win the game basically on annihilation because of our good resource control and good micro using these Wirbelwinds to help us close the game out. So I hope you guys learned something from this game. Like I said, I would like to do a longer form version of this battle group. I'll probably do a 2v2 version at some point eventually, but I hope this gives you some ideas of how to use Breakthrough in your future games. And of course, guys, always happy to answer some comments or questions in the comment section. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Actually, we'll go to the end game stats and take a look. I mean, you can kind of see here. Pretty dead even on KD, but the vehicle kills is really where we pulled away. Then you look at the overall resource distribution, pretty even throughout the game. If you look, yeah, like fuel, Jesulin was actually a little bit up compared to us, but you know, we managed to take out a whole bunch of his vehicles, which helped us a lot. So we ended up, you know, on top in that case. Anyway, hope you nerds enjoyed it. We'll see you later.